We live in a world that increasingly no one fully understands. Not the politicians, not the scientists, and least of all the people who make documentaries about it. Unexpected events keep happening that, on the face of it, seem totally inexplicable, but once you examine them more closely, are actually really stupid. This is a film about society, money and power. It's a film about education, public transport, banjos and aliens. About geopolitics, soup, drugs, mice, economic instability and balloons. But above all, this is a film about communities, and how the very forces that link us together are the same ones driving us apart, and how a single decision, taken in isolation, can be the catalyst for immense societal change, but usually isn't, and how the ghosts of history are doomed always to haunt the rulers of the present by going woo at them. But above even all that stuff that was above everything else before it, it's about how those with the money and the power to change things, rather than facing up to the complexities of the modern world, retreated into a childlike view of reality that bore no relationship to what was actually going on, except the trees looked the same. This story begins in the late 1950s with a man called Edwin Jones. Edwin Jones is almost entirely forgotten today, but at the time he was almost entirely forgotten as well. He was a train driver on a small branch line in the top left-hand corner of Wales, and the engine Jones drove was a small green tank locomotive owned by the Merioneth and Llantysilio Rail Traction Company Limited. Jones gave this engine a nickname, Ivor. There he is, look. Jones had been driving Ivor the engine for so long that he had become the only person who could operate and maintain it with any degree of competence, but because he didn't own it, that left him vulnerable to market forces. So when the managing director, Mr. Williams, announced that he was selling the Merioneth and Llantysilio Rail Traction Company because it was unprofitable for its shareholders, in one fell swoop Jones lost his job, Ivor lost its viability as an effective mode of transport, and the people of the top left-hand corner of Wales lost a vital link between their various communities. Village was cut off from village, farmers from their markets, and local populations from jobs, services and public lavatories. This led to increasing feelings of isolation, constipation and despair amongst the working population of the top left-hand corner of Wales, feelings which in years to come were to grow and spread to the other 3 corners of Wales, and ultimately to all 37 corners of the UK. But to trace the roots of this entrenched and divisive system, we need to go back in time nearly 800 bloody years, to the lands of the north, where the Black Rocks stood guard against the cold sea. Here, in the kingdom of the Nogs, King Noggin the Nog had married Nooka of the Nooks as part of a complicated trade deal which gave the Nogs and the Nooks exclusive commercial rights over the whole of the North Sea. It was a marriage of convenience, and Noggin could well have been homosexual. We have no way of knowing one way or the other, but I reckon he was. What we do know is that Noggin had an ulterior motive for the marriage, which was to prevent his uncle, Nogbad the Bad, inheriting the throne. Noggin knew Nogbad to be a morally compromised potential despot who, in the event of his seizing power, would lose no time in imposing draconian laws on his subjects and conscripting them into an army with which he intended to attack and enslave the Nook nation. Also, he was just bad. After Noggin had defeated an attempted coup by Nogbad and a flock of giant crows, in order to forestall any future insurrection, he enacted such far-reaching and restrictive laws that, ironically, he ended up with a more powerful and centralised system of government than even Nogbad had dreamt of. Without setting out to do so, Noggin had enshrined the stratification of society in the constitution of the Nogs, so that when a Nog scientist called Olaf the Lofty came up with the prototype of the steam engine, it automatically became the exclusive property of the monarchy and was only ever used to propel Noggin's royal carriage rather than as a universal mode of transport. This unquestioned state of affairs was to evolve over the centuries into a rigid class structure dividing the owners from the workers, resulting in, amongst other things, the Merioneth and Llantysilio Rail Traction Company and Edwin Jones's redundancy.
Oh dear.
But Jones wasn't finished just yet. We'll return to his story later on, once I've had some crisps.